You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi, and today it is Wednesday. It's January 21st, 2026. And I want to start out today with an article I've written in American Thinker, which I think is really important, and it's not getting the attention it needs to get. But what the article is about is the Supreme Court last week made a decision that is largely been overlooked. And what the decision did was it gave standing to political candidates for federal office to challenge state board of election rules for voting prior to an election. Now, that's extremely important because what has happened up until now has been that the courts have denied standing every time an election issue has been brought forward. That started in 2020. And if you remember, in 2020, we had even a group of states that petitioned the Supreme Court wanting to challenge that, in fact, the rules that had been adopted by the states violated the Constitution, in that they were rules made by various government officials or the State Board of Election, not by the state legislature, which the Constitution requires. The Supreme Court didn't take the case. But yet, last Wednesday, January 14th, the decision was Michael J. Bost, B-O-S-T. Bost is a congressman from Illinois in the House of Representatives versus the Illinois State Board of Elections. And what Bost was contesting was an Illinois State Board of Elections rules that requires election officials to count mail-in ballots that are postmarked or certified no later than Election Day, but received within 2 weeks of the election day. So the State Board of Elections in Illinois demands that the state continue counting votes for 2 weeks, mail-in votes especially. Okay, and this gives an opportunity for fraud in that you can take that time to create fake mail-in votes that are certified or appear to be certified or postmarked, or you don't pay attention to the certified or the postmark. Count them anyway, and that way you can create enough fake mail-in votes to make sure that you beat the Republican who won. That's the fraud issue. Okay, now this standing issue, and I want to make sure you understand standing. In bringing a case to court, you have to have standing. In other words, you have to be able to say this case affects me. It affects me personally in the following way. Okay, so Chief Justice Roberts, who wrote the majority opinion of the court, and Roberts had been opposed to granting standing in all these cases. It was a 7-2 decision. And Roberts wrote that under Article 3 of the Constitution, plaintiffs must have a personal stake in a case to have standing to sue. They must, in other words, be able to answer a basic question: what is it to you? Congressman Bost has an obvious answer. He is a candidate for office, and a candidate has a personal stake in the rules that govern the counting of voting in his election. Now, that's a very clear and a big statement, because what it means is that you can challenge an election as a federal candidate for office now, saying the state rule is not fair, and it's before the voting is taking place. It could be right now. It could be done continuously right now, right up until the election. And what Chief Justice Kenji Jackson was objecting to was that she said that essentially this changing of the rules of standing for election challenges means that that they're going to get a flood of cases coming in, and potentially what it does is throw the judiciary into the political arena, which it was what Justice Roberts was trying to avoid in 2020. He did not want to say that the election in 2020 was stolen, or that President Trump had really won. Okay, but the right to challenge is not dependent, according to Justice Roberts, the candidate doesn't have to prove that they would lose the election because of the rule. He used an analogy. He said, for instance, the candidates have a personal stake in how the result is determined and regarded. Departures from preordained rules cause them particularized and concrete harm. Same is true of competitors in other contests. Each runner in a 100-meter dash, for instance, would suffer if the race were unexpectedly extended to 105 meters. Whether a particular runner expects to finish strong or fall off in the pace in the final 5 meters, all would be deprived of the chance to compete for the prize that the rules define. The fastest to run the 105-meter has not won the 100-meter dash. Maybe he wasn't the winner at 100 meters, but he was at 105. All the extra illegal votes being counted. Now, on God's 5 stones, we have Andrew Paquette's research, which documents in a number of states that there are these algorithms, these secret codes that allow basically unprincipled people to create thousands of false records for non-existent voters who nevertheless are granted legitimate state voter IDs, making modified duplicate records available for use in mail-in ballot schemes. Now, these secret codes inherently violate the Help America Vote Act requirements, and once challenged in court, they would essentially have to be turned down. Now, the states where, if you take a look at God's 5 stones, we've shown algorithms are New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Florida, New Jersey, and Oklahoma. And there are others we have not published, but that we've done work in Texas, we've done work in California. These algorithms appear to be in virtually all the states. So, if radical Democrats are planning to steal the midterm elections, and that's how they think that they're going to gain back Congress, well, there's several different ways in which now President Trump and the MAGA movement can prevent that. One is by getting MAGA candidates for office in all these states to start filing challenges in federal courts saying that the rules set by the state boards of election aren't fair. This challenges get hundreds of lawsuits. Flood the courts with them. I mean, the left does lawfare. Why can't we use the courts to get justice? Now, if we do this, if we get this going, it's going to create a swell of activity, a groundswell of activity. Okay, and so, President Trump is building now a lot of information coming out of the Justice Department that, in fact, the massive voter fraud. So, for instance, President Trump is preparing a new executive order that would declare a national emergency order based on evidence that China penetrated U.S. election computers to modify election votes. And in 2025, December, Department of Justice Civil Rights Division announced it had filed against 6 states, Delaware, Maryland, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington State, for failing to produce their statewide voter registration lists, which contain thousands of records that violate federal laws, including the registration of illegal immigrants through various motor voter registration schemes, among others. Okay, so President Trump has repeatedly accused the Democrats of opposing voter ID, opposing proof of citizenship, and engaging in numerous instances of mail-in ballots to steal elections. President Trump continues to insist that the alleged evidence of alleged 2020 election fraud is coming out in truckloads. Well, now that we've seen all the scandals of the Somali theft of billions of dollars of taxpayer money in these daycare centers that don't exist, and driving people to hospitals and shopping centers if they're have physical problems or are elderly, the radical Democrats are making it clear that they are really now not only a communist party, but an insurrectionist party that does not feel any obligation to follow the laws of the United States, especially not when it comes to cleaning out illegal immigrants. And a nationwide effort is going on by the left to oppose ICE, spearheaded in Minneapolis. And Americans, I think, are beginning to become aware of the need for this SAVE Act, which is going through the Senate now. It was House Resolution 22. It's already passed the House. And it would require voter IDs. And again, this is the move towards proof of citizenship. Okay, so if we continue this movement and continue to utilize this court decision, we can create a groundswell of activity which will at least back up President Trump's executive order if that's what he has to do. And if our elections are compromised by foreign interference, this is an act of war. So we have the ability here now to even use the military, if President Trump had to, if states refuse to cooperate with federal rules under a national security emergency that President Trump could issue under Article 3 as his powers of commander-in-chief. Now, Chris, I want you to come on and comment on this because I think it's extremely important. And as you're preparing to do that, I'm going to close the door here because it's cold this morning and I had to ventilate. I'm still in transition. So I'm in temporary quarters here and I'm moving. But go ahead, Chris.
You're transitioning?
I'm transitioning.
There we go.
I'm transitioning. But that's okay, from one house to another house, and it's not having anything to do with sexual identity or anything else.
So you're not going to be Caitlin. All right, there we go.
I'm not going to be Caitlin. That's not going to happen.
So there we go. Yeah. There were instances of now. There are instances now of independent journalists being attacked, having their cameras. One had his camera stolen by. Well, that was another instance. That was the whole Somali thing. But this other guy in Philadelphia got pepper sprayed and attacked by some crazy woman. It's nuts out there. But there are a number of Americans out there, and generally, I believe young people call them awfuls. You've heard this.
Yeah.
You've heard this acronym, right? The awful.
Yes, they used to be called. What were they called for? Oh well, they were called. I had another name for them.
Right. These are affluent women, affluent white urban female liberals. That's it.
Right.
Awful. Yes. They're all over the place, and them and their cohorts wait every morning to find out what their influencers or how their influencers tell them to think, and they go out and march along with it. Either they yammer on TikTok about it, or they go out and take it to the streets. And this is what's happening. They were chomping at the bit, waiting for Renee Good to happen. They were waiting for it.
It's a George Floyd. It's a setup. I mean, it's they have a pattern. As soon as they get a martyr, the left then can march in the streets, and they thought they had the upper hand. They are also sanctimonious, but I think this time it's completely backfired because what they're doing is they're supporting Somali criminals, and Donald Trump yesterday in the White House was showing the mugshots and the rap sheets of the people who are being arrested by ICE. And clearly the Democrats are now supporting rapists, murderers, criminals of the worst kind. And then there was an incident in a Philadelphia bus where a independent journalist, Frank Scales of Surge, Philly, posted an account of an unprovoked attack on a journalist who was simply looking out the window and minding his own business. So this woman, and these are the women these women, leftist women, are the ones who are insane. And they just scream, and they scream the F word repeatedly, and they're incoherent. I mean, they come out, and I think this is a result of feminism. These women are not getting married. They don't have children. They feel like their lives are unhinged. And so therefore we get this bizarre behavior. And I'm amazed that this stuff has continued to go on unchecked, but it's spreading. The women are on the left are simply nuts, and they're not getting married. It's the women who don't want to get married right now.
Right.
The women who are divorcing.
And that's fine and well for them, but they're trying to convince other young women to join them in the same misery that they have.
Yeah, well, it's going on, that's for sure. And what I think we're finding now that the left is about to realize this isn't just fun and games. I mean, for instance, there were three, this is on Gateway Pundit, there were three Midwest tourists vacationing in Florida, and they were stalked and gunned down by Ahmed Jihad Boje. They were Midwestern men vacationing in Florida, and this armed guy first degree murder, but he was acquitted after an insanity plea. Okay, I mean, he was charged.
Guy. He probably should have attacked a shower before some tourists, you know.
Yeah, they were on a guy's trip attending a car show over the weekend, and this guy just murdered them. The three men were waiting for help after troubles with a rental car, and this guy approached them and just fatally shot them. And there were no known interactions or anything else. And these guys are now dead, and he was arrested in connection with the murders. And it was cold-blooded, premeditated, absolutely no issues, no conflict, just a random event. Deputies responded around 12:13 Saturday to a shooting in near this town. They found the three men suffered from the gunshot wounds. Three victims were struck at the rental home after having vehicle trouble. They extended their stay one day to wait for service of the car. Okay, but evidently this guy, I mean, it seems like, if I'm reading it correctly, that he was charged with arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder, but he was acquitted after an insanity plea. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, is that, the American people are not going to accept this. I mean, this is just outrageous. And then you've got Don Lemon, who is showing up at churches.
You have to laugh at this. The irony of Don Lemon storming into a church with these people that he knew were going to commit a crime puts him in danger of being prosecuted via the Klan Act.
Right, the KKK Act.
Right. A gay black journalist. Just think about this. The irony is absolutely fantastic.
Well, I think that you're going to find Don Lemon is going to be in legal problems, and the Justice Department evidently served grand jury notices, which are the beginning of a criminal process against Governor Waltz, against this mayor in Minneapolis, and against one other person. I guess it was the what's his name, the Attorney General of the state. And that's the beginning of going after these people for criminally impeding ICE from doing its job. So this is no longer just fun and games. It's no longer Martin Luther King protesting. This is criminal activity impeding legitimate federal law enforcement from doing its job. And, so I guess they were issued to, subpoenas were issued to Waltz, Frey, and other far-left Minnesota officials, including Attorney General Keith Ellison. This is a federal investigation into whether or not they have impeded ICE. And this is quite serious. This is not a joke. Okay, so we're finding the Department of Justice is now taking action. And if the Department of Justice continues to take action, this will end up in criminal charges and criminal convictions. So again, I see a shift here where the American public are not going along with this as they did in 2020. And President Trump has the federal troops in standby for the Insurrection Act. National Guard has been called up in Minneapolis, and we'll see what happens. Trump is positioning to take strong action across the globe. We went and arrested Maduro and got him out of Venezuela, and now we're arresting tankers who are trying to get Venezuelan oil for China or Russia. And Russia and China are not objecting to their tankers being seized. If they do object, there's no gunfire, there's no fighting over it yet. But it is a strong move, and it's a strong move by the Trump administration to say the Western Hemisphere is going to come under American influence, which puts out messages to Cuba and to Colombia to basically come into line, not with communism, not with Russia and China, but with the United States. And I think President Trump is going to make a move at Davos to make it clear that the United States is going to take over Greenland. We're going to have the entire hemisphere, I think, under our control, even if Canada is now courting China. Canada is, headed to be a failed economy, just like much of the rest of the world is. And the amount of debt, I've said for ages, worldwide debt is just incredible and mounting, and no end in sight. Chris, you want to comment?
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to watch the people in Davos slack-jawed again at what Donald Trump has to say to them.
Right.
And if you listen to what Canadian Prime Minister Carney said at Davos this week, this is important. He was yammering on about the middle powers. He was going on, oh, we can't let the major powers to outdo the middle powers. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he was saying. Then he said he was working he's working on a relationship with China, one of the very huge powers, and of course, an adversary to us inside our sphere of influence. I do believe there are some ulterior motives there from him. We all know what the Chinese Communist Party is all about, and we all know how far left the Canadian Communist Party is as well. The thing is, he was touting the virtues of the one world government to cripple. Again, this is the idea of Davos, to cripple the major powers, the first world countries, and bring them down to the level of some of the second, third worlders. I know the prime minister was talking about the middle countries, if you will, but this is the philosophy of Davos, and it always has been. It's going to be a powerful few, even worse than what Carney was saying about the maybe 2-3 major powers here in the world.
Well, I think we're seeing, even in Davos, an understanding that the EU project has failed. And now the EU is clamping down on dissent the same way that Great Britain is. And Europe and Great Britain are being overwhelmed with Muslim immigration, which is not integrating or assimilating into society. And so therefore, Europe is at the risk of being a failed state. And I don't see any real way to save it at this point, because the Muslim invasion has reached a level that I don't see how it can be reversed without doing the kinds of things we're doing. At the same time, gold is now trading at it was trading at $4,900 an ounce just, I guess, yesterday for a while. And silver is right about $95 an ounce. And so with, gold at $5,000 and silver at $100, what I've been predicting and encouraging people to go to Swiss America for a long time is that it's a good idea if you get a hold of some silver. It's cheaper than gold. It's going to appreciate at a faster rate. It's going to double faster than gold is going to double. And any money you invest in silver is going to double as a consequence. But I think it's a time to get in touch with Swiss America and talk to their agents and get some things going with them. But the point is that the world is in transition right now, and Donald Trump is moving U.S. naval assets into the Mediterranean, and the uprising in Iran is being quashed because now the military is moving into the streets, and the Bajish on their motorcycles, the police, are beginning to arrest protesters, and they will begin being jailed and disappearing and killed. It may not be a public execution, and the regime may lie and say it's not killing anyone, but secretly they'll be being killed. And this is the technique and tactic that has been used by these regimes to quell protest, and it's happening again. So President Trump is going to face some tests here. He said he's going to do something for the Iranian people. Well, he's going to have to follow through with that. Same way as he's essentially saying to the world that this new Gaza Commission is going to function and it's going to not allow Hamas to return to the Gaza Strip. So Trump is undertaking massive moves that are reshaping the politics so that the left is going insane and committing political suicide around the world. There's even a story on Gateway Pundit today about, the concern, and I think legitimate concern, that universities are going to start closing. I think I'd be happy if they closed half the universities, because all they are is breeding grounds for communism, insurrection, hate America, and all the rest. And Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, told the Davos World Economic Forum that globalism had failed the West, and it has. It's a failed idea. It's as bankrupt as climate change and global warming and all the other ideas they tried to advance in order to destroy the middle class and consolidate power in the hands of the globalist millionaires and billionaires. Chris, you want to comment on this?
Oh, they've been telling the Davos people this for years. I loved Javier Milei's speech after he became president of Argentina. He just basically Davos, was it last year or the year before? The
They
World
meet
Econ-
they meet
yeah,
they're
yeah,
meeting now.
right. But I mean, the one when Milei was talking with them and told them
That
that
might have
the
been
world
last year.
doesn't like them. That was last year. Yeah. Okay. The theme for that meeting was, in essence, why don't people like the World Economic Forum?
Right.
That was the theme. And they invited people like Trump and Milei over to tell them. And they were told flat out why. What are they doing? They are doubling down on all this. They brought the CEO of BlackRock in after Klaus Schwab was publicly humiliated. They doubled down on the New World Order. They still have their proponents of that, like Starmer, Macron, and Carney at this point, because Trudeau was a flake. Now they got somebody who's a little more competent than Trudeau, and they think they can rebuild this globalist army from, as Carney would say, the mid powers.
Well, it's not going to happen. I think globalism is bankrupt because, again, they destroyed the middle class. And when you destroy the middle class in these countries, you destroy the economic base. They're suicidal. It's always been the problem with globalism. If you ship all the jobs to China, where slaves do the work, how do you expect the middle class to have the money to buy the goods?
Well, that's the point. The elimination of the middle class is a pillar of globalism. You
Right.
can't have too much people have too much power. In fact, that's exactly what Carney was saying in a different way, except he was proposing the death of the middle class along with the World Economic Forum types, but he was upset that the middle powers, of course, the middle class, if you will, wasn't getting enough power thanks to the larger countries, which is now that you mentioned that's an interesting juxtaposition, an interesting irony, if you will.
Well, I think we're going to be in a situation here where we're going to have to deal with all of these different configurations, and we're step by step. Donald Trump is taking over, and he's going to be resisted, but I don't think he's going to fail, especially if we can get fair elections, which mean one way or another to have voter ID, proof of citizenship, get rid of the machines, limit mail-in balloting to the old balloting when you had a reason to be getting an absentee ballot. It was tightly controlled, and to get the cheating and the stealing and the graft that the Democrats have been doing, expose the Democratic Party for what it is: a treasonous, communist, neo-Marxist, cultural Maoist party that hates America. And if that extends into the universities, then we don't need the universities. But I think we're at a fundamental point in America where we're not quite at civil war, but yet the divide between the radical left and the rest of America has never been more intense. But I do think, again, to sum it up, in the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. And as Dr. Jerome Corsi today, it's January 21st, Wednesday. We encourage everybody, and I think it's increasingly important that we pay attention to 2 Chronicles 7:14 and get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for letting the country get to this point. We should have been fighting Roe v. Wade much earlier, resisting the Supreme Court when 1940s that Justice Black and others started taking God out of the schools. But it's never too late. God will hear our prayer and intervene. God can save our land, especially if enough of us return to Jesus Christ and return to these fundamental principles of traditional values. This insanity of the left, all the ideas of the left just don't work, including their feminism. As Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you for joining us. We're going to do as many broadcasts and weekdays as we can. Again, I'm shifting and transitioning, going from ending with my wife divorcing me, a 32-year marriage, to a new life. And I'll be reinventing things and moving forward with investment banking and some other activities very strongly into 2026. Thank you for your support. God bless. And please continue to follow us at gods5stones.com. Thank you.